There are a couple of things I forgot to mention right in the very beginning. We also have the representatives from the Dutch Embassy that are online. They have agreed to listen to what our needs are, what our critical needs are, and then try to help us come up with some permanent solutions. So the other thing I forgot to mention is those online that have questions or comments, please put them in the chat box. We have someone monitoring that, and we will try to answer your questions as we go along. If we can't get to them, we will take those questions and we will get back to you. So make sure you tell us who you are that's asking the question. Okay, so the first moderated discussion is the county introductions and critical unmet needs. What I'll do is, name a county. If you would like to speak, please raise your hand and we'll take your comments. So let's start with Sarasota County. Is there anyone here from Sarasota County? Okay.
Hi there. Thank you for putting this on together. I was actually writing down some of the thoughts we have in Sarasota County, and I'll briefly go over a couple of them. Health and social services needs. We need help in assessing and identify lessons learned from the recent Disaster Supplemental Nutritional Assistance Program, DSNAP. Efforts to ensure better messaging and processing in the future. Also, additional warehouse usage and transportation capabilities are needed so that the VOADs can accept donations of response and recovery supplies, for example, housing materials and furniture. Also, under housing needs, affordable housing for low and moderate income households is an ongoing challenge. And there's all kinds of funding needs that I won't go into. Maybe I'll just drop this off for you. But the Stanford Act changes. The board is advocating changes in the Stanford Act to streamline and remove barriers to facilitate the recovery process. Communities are tasked with navigating the bureaucracy of not just the statute, but the myriad of regulations and interpretation of regulations in the weeks, months, and years post-event. Changes in debris collection for private roads, mobile home parks, and rulings on rights of entry need to be reviewed and adjusted. Current FEMA guidance directs communities to begin collection on private roads when warranted and to complete a private property debris removal, PPDR. However, that does not guarantee reimbursement will be approved. In Sarasota County, 50% of the road network is private roads. One size does not fit all and should not be left to changing interpretations when millions of dollars are at stake years later. Another area is mobile home parks and condominiums. During Hurricane Ian, multiple mobile home parks were catastrophically damaged. A mobile home park is a commercial entity in FEMA's definition. However, each mobile home is owned by a citizen, and the park is not responsible, nor do they have the ability to handle the debris collection. The same applies for the condo when the HOA does not have the insurance for debris or ability to obtain and levy high fees to citizens in the condo for collection, while next door homes are allowed to place debris in the right-of-way for collection. Just one other thing I wanted to bring up. I'm an architect in my other life, and one of the big questions I have has to do with FEMA lowering the base flood elevation on the barrier islands. My house on Siesta Key became within a foot of being flooded during Helene, and my base flood elevation went from 11 to 9 in the recent flood maps. And we're not alone. There's a lot of coastal areas. And if we're talking about resiliency, we're now going to allow folks to build a couple feet lower in areas that are prone to flooding. And it doesn't make any sense. So I ask all the agencies, all the federal agencies. I know FEMA, it takes a while for the flood maps to be readjusted, but I think there's been a major error in lowering the flood zones. and we're going to suffer the consequences as we build forward. So please take that into consideration.
Thank you so much. I think we captured everything you said on the wall over here, but if you would please share that with us, that would be fantastic. I'm sorry, go ahead.
I just wanted a point of clarification. Did you mean the Stafford Act?
Yes.
Stanford Act? Stafford Act? Okay. Stafford. S-T-A-F.
Do we have anyone else from Sarasota County that wanted to speak? Do we have any cities from Sarasota County that would like to speak? Okay, oh, here's one.
And then we have got, I'm Joan Farrell,
Here.
I'm Joan Farrell, I'm on, is this on?
Yes, we can hear.
On Venice City Council. We also have a former city council member and vice mayor. Do you want to come over here, Sue, and give yours too? Sue has been preparing all this paperwork, and we've been begging our city manager. Is anybody else here from the city? I'm not, oh, here's some folks. Okay, good. Well, add to it if you wish. But Sue, do you have your papers all filled out? Do you want to talk about them?
I did turn one in, and I have more copies. I'll try to put this in the context that applies to not just residential. I'm currently on a committee that's for a neighborhood that suffered a real disaster because of the stormwater drainage failure. So this is not just a residential problem. I'm sure everybody knows we have a lot of failing stormwater drainage infrastructure throughout our counties that has not kept up with the development. And yeah, and that's coming up. So one of the projects we're looking at is, updating that stormwater drainage infrastructure. And that affects commercial, not just residential. This is public roads, et cetera. The other thing the gentleman from Sarasota mentioned, the debris pickup. And again, this is not just residential or public roads, and it's also, there's some quasi-private areas. There was like a triple whammy that happened between Helene and Milton. After Helene hit and people were flooded, well, the first thing you do in Florida, as everybody knows, you've got to rip everything out that got wet, because otherwise your structure, whether it's your house or your store, it's going to become all moldy, and now you've got a much bigger problem. So after Helene, people got out there, they ripped all the stuff out, sheetrock, stoves, refrigerators, cabinets, it all went out on the street. Well, our city, like probably many others, relied on outside haulers to come to the aid when there's a disaster, because disasters don't happen every day. Well, the outside haulers didn't make it to Florida, and especially our area, as you all know. They got detained up north. They never got here. So all of this stuff was sitting on the road. People were screaming at our city, this isn't getting picked up. There were lots of other things. They didn't keep the dump open. People couldn't even, use their own trucks and get rid of stuff. So all of this stuff became projectiles that then slammed it from Milton into other houses and caused even more damage that wouldn't have been caused by the Milton flooding. So now we have compound damage, compound FEMA expense, insurance inspection. So in our city, what we discovered during all this, during that week between Helene and Milton, is the city had containers, those open style containers, and we begged them to drop them. We would fill them if they could just drop them. Well, they didn't have enough trucks. It was one excuse after another. So a lot of stuff never got picked up. So one of the proposals we're making is for cities, instead of relying on outside haulers for their disaster bulky waste pickup, let's purchase and stockpile these open containers, which are easily stacked and stockpiled, a few more claw trucks, a couple of more trucks for the roll-off containers, and our cities and counties can pick up that bulky waste immediately afterwards, instead of letting it sit there and then we have a compounded problem. Just one more thing I want to mention in our proposal that we've discovered is development, as you know, is the big cause of our stormwater drainage problems. Destruction of wetlands, development where the stormwater is going onto neighboring properties, it's going onto the roads, it's overwhelming, it's dumping into bays, creeks, et cetera. It's overwhelming the system. So we need to overhaul our land use regs and our building codes. We need to maximize that stormwater on site. And we can do it through the use of the lot coverage restrictions and maximizing pervious materials. And of course, making sure we don't destroy wetlands. But, so that's a proposal, and that's commercial, that's residential, it's throughout our entire state. We really need to overhaul our land use regs and our building codes so that we can mitigate flooding. Thank you.
Thank you. We had a couple people over.
I had two. That was hers. She had hers already prepared.
Okay.
And I have two.
Oh, okay, sorry.
Okay, mine are real quick. We need to plant mangroves in Venice. We need to hire a living shoreline expert, Marine Resources Council, Moat Marine, any of the universities, et cetera, to select the planting sites for the mangroves, reef balls, and other living shoreline elements, and then install them. So that's one. And the other is that our mobile home parks, 5 of them, and 2 areas on the island are in special flood hazard areas. Our flood manager is Christina Rhymes, is over there in the white sweater. She's waving. And so we need to get some people back in the homes. Obviously, the mobile homes will be in other mobile homes, and they'll need to be elevated, et cetera, up to code. But there's 2 areas on the island, and I think that they need to get some religion and understand that maybe they don't have to have a stick-built home, and maybe a manufactured home elevated would be the thing for them. So we need help on that. I'm not sure exactly. I mean, we need that help, whether it would be a matching grant or something. Thank you so very much.
Ladies, did you have some comments you want to make? Okay, we'll bring you.
Yeah, real quick, on the way there, to what she was saying, she was talking about a lot of resilient efforts, and they make a lot of difference with the recovery and resiliency are hand in hand all the way.
Hi, I'm Brenda Westlake. I work for the City of Venice, and my primary position is for public-owned facilities, owned and operated facilities, and we are working with FEMA on the public assistance side. We've done all our applications, and we have agreements, and we're going through that process, still going through the process with Ian, and now Milton and Helene, so we know it's a few years process for each storm. But we understand that process, and we're fortunate to have a consultant helping us too, since these storms were pretty big and just a lot of projects. But one of the things that we have, because I knew EDA was here, and we do have an economic unmet need, but I'm not sure it fits into the program. We have the Humphreys Park. We have these 2 jetties that go out into the Gulf. And within one of the jetties, there's a park there. And we had to close that park. We actually just opened it right before Helene because of Tropical Storm Debbie did some damage. But we did some fill, and we had a concession stand there, or a vendor, and some restrooms. But unfortunately with Helene, we got damage, and then Milton pretty much took the whole park. So we have a fence there right now, but one of the things, that park is so important to the city. We get visited by like thousands of people a day to watch the sunset, eat at the concessions. It's just very popular. And we have area restaurants and businesses that have been totally impacted with that park being closed. But FEMA, because that park gets impacted with every storm, there seems to be consistent damage. But now we're looking at ways to try to mitigate it as much as possible. So like I said, I'm not sure it fits into the EDA purview, but we're figuring just for the park portion, that's about $1.5 million. The jetty itself is about $6 million, but the Corps of Engineers and the WCA&D is going to be assisting us with that piece of it. Then again, the timing of that's going to be critical. But that's one of our unmet needs for a city-owned property. Then again, we're going through FEMA for the rest of the pieces of it.
Just let me try to answer the question. So I would put the project in, and the reason I say that is because we don't know at this point what the guidance in the funding language that we'll have for our portion of the disaster supplemental that Congress appropriated. In the past, we have been able to do tourism redevelopment projects. So, but I can't speak because I don't know what the language is going to be. So the simple answer is the fact that you've developed the scope of work and the project, definitely, put in the project sheet. And once our funding language is codified, I can circle back to in terms of whether it's eligible. Right now, it wouldn't be eligible because we typically we typically are not allowed to build out government functions like community amenities and parks and things like that. However, with the disaster, there may be some flexibility on that question. So I don't have an answer at this point.
Okay.
But just to say, it is an important project, and I would still put it in. And part of our job is to see where we can put the pieces together. Letta, do you want to?
Yes, great, thank you. And then later I will ask our community assistance deputy to chime in. So one of the things that from the FEMA side would like to look into, what is the portion that is part of the public assistance claim that is being submitted? You mentioned that there is already something on the works. So what we would be interested is to look at what are the aspects of the overall project that would not be part of that public assistance. And then we can look into, is that a piece that perhaps we can work with our NCR field coordinator under some of the programs that they may have, because there is a component related to parks. And what else can we bring into the community assistance that perhaps, again, can help to complement? So that's why it's so important for us to have these discussions, because then we want to see what is the overall in terms of projects, what piece will belong to EDA, and then what other pieces can we bring any other interagency to be part of?
Now, we did for the FEMA piece of it, we did put in for the lift station. There's a lift station there.
yeah.
So we did put in for that, but nothing else for that project would be FEMA eligible under the PA.
Yeah.
So, but that's one of our projects that we feel that is very important to the economic development area to the city. And we also have a Venice fishing pier, but it's my understanding we're already in the process of fixing that, so it wouldn't probably need any funding.
No, because if you already started the activity, then it's not, we can't go back.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
For that, so.
Yeah,
Yeah.
thank you.
And Jim?
Yes, I had the same questions about the PA, what part of it was fundable through the PA. But the other thought I had was through EHP. I was mentioning to Brandon that we need to go back and talk to Josh and see if there's other funding available through environmental health and preservation through their programs, so.
I think the important thing to realize today is during the discussions today and afterwards, you don't need necessarily to try to figure out what funding bucket it's going to fit into. As long as you give us a good understanding of what the project is and who the point of contact, what the city is to kind of champion that project, it's our job to make the determination as to whether it fits into, FEMA's bucket or an EDA bucket or a NCR bucket. You don't need to worry about that. The things that we're going to want to know is on that one-page project, give us a summary of the project, give us the cost, and give us the contact, and tell us how it.
Got pictures too.
Perfect, and you have pictures, again, the visual is really important, so appreciate you bringing those projects forward.
Make sure, by the way, those projects get to Walker.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Okay, wonderful, thank you.
Yeah, I wanted to follow up on that Humphreys Park. One of the real critical things there is to look at the difference between the PA piece of it and any potential resilience or mitigation element. Like, we were facing kind of the same thing at Assateague Island, National Seashore, and we actually went to a different strategy for certain basic services like wastewater. We got into it, we had been rebuilding the bathroom facilities out there for 2 or 3 hurricanes, and finally our Development Investment Board said, we're not going to do that anymore, and they switched to a removable style of bathroom infrastructure that you just pick it up when you know there's a hurricane coming, and you move it to high ground, and that way you don't have to rebuild it every time. And so the key point there is for Humphreys Park, I think you want to be very careful about running into a strict replacement approach. Like, if you've got a good architect who understands the natural context of Humphreys Park and can plan an approach that builds in mind that we're going to have another hurricane, and what do you do to make that Humphreys Park resilient in the sense that even if it's damaged, it can be relatively rapidly rebuilt or occupied because it's such a good community asset. That's what you want to target with an economic development request or a request from community assistance where they can help with that planning. That's what I.
That's exactly what we want to do.
Yeah.
Because we do keep consistently getting storm events, and we also are looking at the base, trying to figure out a way to make that more resilient so that it doesn't wash away as easy too. So we're definitely looking into those. We got a great team. We're just hoping that we can find a source to help us.
Thank you. We're going to move on to Charlotte County. Is there anybody here from Charlotte County that wants to speak? Oh, back behind you.
We had one more.
Oh, okay.
Sorry, for the city of Venice as well. One of the projects that we're looking at the city of Venice is one called Flamingo Ditch, and it's part of our outfall system. And right now we have a consultant that's conducting a feasibility study to assess potential solutions to reduce or stop flooding of the roadways and properties surrounding Flamingo Ditch. But it is important to note that the property is privately owned and the city is in support of any mitigation project. So I'm not sure if that's something that would qualify.
Can I clarify that?
The city is in support.
in support.
Yes, the city is in support of any mitigation projects.
And that's a residential area?
It is a residential area, yes.
Can I just clarify, the city has an easement to utilize Flamingo Ditch as the public stormwater drainage for an entire several block area. So it is a public.
This is public drainage infrastructure, okay? The fact that the land in the ditch happens to be privately owned, but that's why the city has an easement and has for many years for the public stormwater drainage, and that's why it is eligible.
Yeah, thanks for clarifying that, because.
Okay, Jim, we have someone over here who would like to speak. He has to leave, so we'll let him go next. Please tell us your name
Sure.
and what county you're from.
Yeah, thank you. My name is Joe Kilraina from the city of Cape Coral, Lee County. Basically, we came through the latter 3 storms pretty well, although the people were damaged. We had some damage from those. Eon was the lessons learned for that we take away from that. I think it'd be helpful here. Basically, the Cape, as it's arranged right now, developed right now, is two different stories. The North Cape, it kind of was high and dry, during most of the eon, but the Lower Cape has a very restrictive and old stormwater evacuation system, and we have a lot of canal levels that were increased. So that system in itself, we're going back and just retrofitting that. As we build the new Cape, we're putting in larger systems to handle the storms. So they're right-sized. It's the South Cape that really got hammered. And we had good response from FEMA with the debris pickup. It was unbelievable how much help we got from FEMA in that process. What we ended up doing was forming a whole new department in the Cape, where we ended up taking resiliency and storm preparation away from the day-to-day. We had a special department formed, and so that we had all of our emergency people usually involved in that, which was an add-on to their normal jobs. We actually organized such that we put a core of people over, so that was their main focus and continues to be their focus. Some key issues that we have currently, we had a lot of permitting issues, both with DEP and also the Corps of Engineers. Matter of fact, we're still waiting on a Corps of Engineer permit, and the DEP permit just came in last week with respect to our yacht club. The yacht club was a very well-attended, a very historical property in the Cape, very used by almost everyone, very popular. It was on one beach area, totally wiped out. Hopefully we're going to get the Corps of Engineer approval next month, but that has been a nightmare trying to get those through. And for a lot of various reasons, I think we ended up reapplying at least 15 times for that over the last few years. It's amazing. Just a couple other things. Immediately after Eon, we recognized we had power out for about 7 days in most of the Lower Cape. And we recognized that a lot of the large food purveyors, the Publix and everyone else, didn't have emergency backup generators. They end up losing all of their inventory. Those stores had to be kept down. So what we're looking at doing is we actually looking at purchasing some portable generation units to be able to spread around the city. And that may be something that may be applicable to a lot of other people. I mean, the prolonged length of time we were out of energy down there was unbelievable. And we were saved by a lot of utilities coming in. So that was a blessing. And then basically, we had some complications, and I think a lot of people recognize this. When people were trying to do repairs, we had a backlog of permitting that was unbelievable within the city. A lot of people became fed up, and they started doing their own repairs. And that just created havoc with the insurance. We had to go back and go through a whole re-permitting on all of those. It caused us to do an emergency process in which we had to go and just kind of stormtrooper and put a lot of people on getting work that had been done, re-permitted, and proving to FEMA that it was done so that we would not lose the insurance benefit, the 25% flood insurance benefit. And there are just some of the things that we learned. Again, we're still have that department that's working there now, seems to be really helping us a lot. And that's about it in a nutshell, but I wanted to share that with you all.
Thank you
Yes,
so
ma'am.
much.
Yeah, so just if you could, before you leave, if I could get any information about the permit number to follow up with you on, because that definitely.
I'll send that back to you. I have it on my phone somewhere, but I have to be back by, I got council meetings from noontime on today, so I got to get back there by noon, but I'll certainly send you something with those. Yeah. I'll give you my card.
We're going to keep moving.
Contact sheet, though.
Yeah,
I need it on the contact sheet.
sure.
That would be helpful so I can find out what exactly is going on. 'Cause
You got it. You got it.
Okay.
The
I'm sorry.
originally, I'm not sure, but currently, they said they were waiting on the DEP to come through first, and we got that last week. So hopefully, but we had things like people getting taken off the project, someone else coming on new, you didn't know who was on first base, couldn't get anyone to respond, just a lot of bureaucratic stuff that was annoying. Yeah.
Thank you so much. We're going to jump back to Charlotte County people over here in the corner. So Jim, you're going to have to run down there.
No problem. I am a former mayor of Cape Coral, so I'm very proud of that fellow over there.
Thank you, sir. Patrick Fuller, Charlotte County Emergency Management. I'm not going to go through an extensive listing. Through the assistance of the IRC after Hurricane Ian, we developed a pretty extensive long-term recovery plan listing out potential projects. Those all still hold true. None of those have really been addressed with the exception of our hazard mitigation grant for, applications that are a result of Hurricane Ian, which are under review. So we're hopeful that we'll see some improvements in some of the infrastructure. The vulnerability of Charlotte County obviously is incredibly high. We actually saw the storm surge, which we had always known we were vulnerable to, and obviously could have been much worse. Some of the things I will highlight though we're not an entitlement community under housing and urban development's determinations, we're working towards that. We have the population, the 200,000 population, and I think the target date is October 1 of 2026. But because of that, we cannot receive a CDBG-DR direct allocation. That has become problematic to us, with the only benefit our community has received is in the Rebuild Florida program, and unfortunately that has not really been that beneficial. I think the last numbers we received from Florida Commerce was that one home had been repaired as a result of Ian as of December of this last year. And that's primarily from wind damage from Ian, right? So the Elevate Florida program that FDEM is going to be administering in the coming months, we hope to have a number of our residents take advantage of that program to elevate their residential structures, but there's still some need there. We weren't able to take advantage of the HMGP match because we're not fiscally constrained. During the listening sessions that I know that we have set up with your agency, Florida Commerce, that is going to be one of our asks. That is the part of the state action plan, that a HMGP match for all mid-counties, not just the fiscally constrained, would certainly benefit us. A problem, though, is we've really exhausted our HMGP, or our local mitigation strategy project listing, applying and over-applying from the Ian funding opportunity. So we have to rebuild that. We're in limbo in all those projects, really. We only had one awarded thus far. So back to the drawing board to try to find some additional projects or strategically move some of those potentially tier 2 projects from HMGP from Ian over to the Helene Milton funding opportunity, and potentially provide some of our lock-in for hazard mitigation over to FDEM to assist with Elevate Florida. I know it's all these letters and everything, not everybody's fluent in that, but infrastructure-wise, we have a very robust, absolutely, we have a very robust local mitigation strategy work group. We're doubling down on resiliency community-wide, not just on infrastructure, but for our population. We certainly took a hit in the mental health availability of services in Charlotte County. One of our 2 facilities was destroyed and has since been torn down in Charlotte County. So access to mental health resources has been dramatically impacted as a result of not just Ian, but also Milton and Helene. So those are some of the issues. We have an extensive project list as part of our long-term recovery plan that the IRC helped us compile through community listening sessions, and we are more than happy to share that again and help get some of the federal alphabet soup agencies to pitch in. So thank you.
Thank you.
Patrick, thank you. Mark Odell, Charlotte County Economic Development Office. Welcome to Charlotte County, everybody. Go out on business visits. I hear about how great this guy is everywhere I go, and his office, and so pleased we could be here today. I just want to talk a little bit on the economic development side, because it's an economic development thing, right? Yeah, I will. She sends her regards. We'll work our way backwards. This one, lessons learned over the years, right? Especially in getting hit over the last 3 years. But in this last wave, we were able to mobilize our business recovery centers really quickly. And we were able to pull in from RHR, get us a little team of three sharp temps. They spent 3 months just hammering the phones, getting a pulse, calling each of as many as they could of 11,000 businesses here in Charlotte County. Hey, how you doing? What do we need? Are you open? Are we closed? And a bunch of questions, and working our way through it. Later on, doing business retention and expansion activities, everyone's really appreciated that. They're like, wow, I can't believe we got a personal reach. So that does have a lot of meaning. But giving them the resources and getting, especially engaged with our community partners, Small Business Development Center, and mobilizing the state of Florida's SBDC's Mobile Assistance Center, the big RV bus, getting that down here, lining up the businesses to be able to get in for SBA loans and learn about the Florida Emergency Bridge Loan Program and get them up and running. And we take that back a bit further. I don't know if we have any procurement officers in here, but everyone, we have a disaster down here. Everyone wants to show up with a pickup truck and a shovel. Hey, we're coming to Southwest Florida, right? So no, this doesn't work. And as we know with FEMA, purchase under grants rules, they can be very exacting and precise. So we need to educate them. So I see Lita here in the room, haven't seen her for a while, a couple years, but with her special group, I think it's formally formed with SBA and Hector from FEMA, we held a first reverse trade show to educate and get the procurement officers in Southwest Florida in one room, get the potential vendors lined up so they could meet the vendors, learn how to do business with Charlotte County, City of Cape Coral, or anybody in the region. And that just made things go a little bit smoother in this last round. So things to consider. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else from Charlotte County? All right, how about Lee County? Oh.
Good morning, Sharon Woodbury, Economic Development Manager for the City of Cape Coral. So the city has identified a number of projects that are both infrastructure related, but also planning related. What we identified was that there was a need for a business resiliency planning grant to be more comprehensive in nature. As we've been working with our businesses, there are a number of things that we see that have come up as a result of the storms. And our council member mentioned that we are looking at backup and redundant energy sources for grocery stores. But what we found is that a lot of our small businesses, they need to harden their structures in order to prepare for what we've seen is becoming more frequent events. And so we are looking to identify ways to capitalize a loan fund so that businesses can tap into these funds and find ways to not only fund it, but to get technical assistance and someone to come through and evaluate what would be some smart choices to make for their existing businesses, for the business structures. We also have found that there is a lot of confusion with the submission of renovations and plans for permits now, because there are requirements for FEMA where they have to, lift up their structures. And there are a lot of different guidelines and additional steps that they have to take that is just really challenging for our businesses to respond to and to be able to make the improvements that are needed. Some recovering, but some who are just coming into Cape Coral now, they want to establish their business, but they're finding all these additional requirements. And so we're really trying to comprehensively look at ways that we can provide support for them. There is a limited capacity for our staff to be able to work with them hand in hand. And so as part of that, we are really trying to see what type of resources and initiatives that we can take on with that.
Thank you. Anyone else from Lee County? This gentleman here.
Thank you, first of all, for having this conference. It's quite informative for myself. I'm John Salucci. I am the manager for a special district, 298 special district for water. So we're right in the middle of the city of Bonita Springs, and we've been around since 1969, even longer than the city of Bonita's been incorporated, Fort Myers Beach incorporated, and it's all self-funded by the landowners. We've never taken a penny from the city, the county, the state. But we're now having a situation where the economic development all around us, we're around 1,100 acres of zoned Ag 2, and there's a lot of residential and small little agricultural farms within us. And east is 75, north is Coconut Point Mall, west is Tamiami 41, an enormous amount of concrete development, and south is City Bonita. And basically, the impervious coverage alone, just since Irma, is probably 30 to 40% that's surrounding us. So what's happening is all the residents 25 years ago put out and issued a bond to themselves and spent over 20 years, $15 million of their own taxpayer money to redo the canals and the swales and our private roads, they're not public roads, to handle then the forecasted hydraulic models of how much water is coming in. But 25 years later, the amount of coverage is overwhelming the system. Now, FEMA has helped us since Irma and Ian, and we're now working with FEMA for Milton, having some funds. We've had about $317,000 given back to us for cleaning up. And basically, we look at it as putting Band-Aids on some issues with the canals and our weirs. They're not solving the long-term problem of the amount of volume of water flow, water capacity, and I understand we have the Dutch embassy on the phone. I always talk about our canal system as being the little Dutch boy with his finger in the dike. And we're like preventing major flooding and issues that impact that whole part of Lee County. All of our water, we have MS4 permits, we co-permit with Lee County. Army Corps has come in a number of times and looked at our land for people that are trying to build buildings back there. And one of the issues we're trying to do is look for some funding, not only to help build up our infrastructure. We've identified 6 projects I've given to Margaret, which in the scale of what I'm hearing today, what we're looking for is a really small amount of money to do these projects that would be more long-term solutions to our, basically the erosion and turbidity issues of the water that goes in and around and through our water district. One of the issues dealing with the Army Corps of Engineers and Florida DEP is because we're like a little paradise in the middle of Bonita Springs, people are looking at us and say, hey, the zoning there is 1.25 acres. Let me go buy something back there and build these monstrosity houses now. And the issue with that is everything they're doing now is Cypress Head. They're all wetlands. What's left now is Cypress Head wetlands. So of the 1,058 acres, maybe 150, 200 is left that could be built on. We'd really like to find some grant money and turn them to a preserve, turn them into a wetland preserve and stop the building because it's overwhelming the system. We saw it with Irma, terrible flooding. Then we saw it with Ian. Helene was a problem. Milton's been a problem. And then you couple that with all the construction around us. And what people haven't figured out outside of our water district is you have Caloosahatchee. When it overflows, it comes through all the tributary creeks, and Mother Nature says, let me get down to the Gulf. Let me get down to the Everglades. Who's smack in the middle is us and our 1,100 acres. And so our district engineer, I don't know if he was going to be able to come here today. He can answer technical questions, but we've already done our planning. We've already done our first hydraulic models. We're really ready to say, here's our projects, please help us, because we're trying to stop FEMA from giving us money for Band-Aid solutions, and let's look for long-term solutions. Deepen our retention ponds. There's I don't know if it's the Army Corps or EPA is now asking all dry retention need to start turning to wet retention. Okay, that means digging our retention ponds. There's 2 main ones in the Cypress Head, making them deeper. Well, that's a lot of money. And for us as taxpayers to try to do it, landowners, it's just too much. So I'm here today to basically say, we're ready, what source do we go to? Because we need some help. So thank you.
Thank you, John. Okay, anyone else from Lee County? Okay, let's try Hendry County. Is anyone here from Hendry County? Okay.
Good morning, Commissioner Howard, District 2 in Hendry County. Two things. I just wanted to say that we're anticipating that study that's coming forward, and we're still a very strong agriculturally based economy in Hendry County, and all the support that we can give to our agricultural partners in Hendry County, it is vital for our entire county's economy. I also want to say thank you to the EDA and all the partners. We're going to apparently go online with our first zones of broadband next month. So a big jump. Thank you, Sue.
Anyone else from Hendry County? Glades? Oh, there you go.
I'm Bailey Taylor, HR Director with Glades County. I'm a sit-in for our county manager. So Glades County needs quite a few things, healthcare, mental health, transportation, affordable housing, hardening of our facilities, businesses. There's a lot of things Glades County could use.
Thank you. And don't forget to fill out your project forms and put them out there. Okay, anyone else from Glades? Did I miss any? Okay, last but not least, Collier County. Oh, there we go.
Hello, everyone. My name is William Lang. I am the floodplain coordinator for unincorporated Collier County. Our jurisdictions include City of Marco Island, City of Naples, and Everglades City. Drastic differences between the three of those, along with the county, with a lot of federal and state lands associated. I won't get into specific projects necessarily. I have some pointed questions, and I come from a flood background, so they would be flood-centric. But the Elevate Florida program through FDEM right now is very enticing. We're very excited about that. We did ask the state if this was going to be a multi-year project, and they weren't able to answer that immediately. I think they want to see the success or failure of this program. What we're looking at is, for us, is have any of these agencies considered matching funds with that? I know that's always an item of contention between federal agencies, but specifically when it comes to commercial properties, I think that would bleed over with a lot of these agencies and what you do. So that's one consideration, is just any future matching funds. Where Charlotte County is a little more robust with their local mitigation strategy working group, I'm the chairperson in Collier County for our LMS working group, and we primarily focus on FEMA HMA programs. So HMGP, BRIC, FMA. We're very fortunate to have FMA Swift Current now. I think we don't have enough information yet from the state, even though they've put out a little bit of guidance on their storm initiative, the revolving fund opportunity for communities and the low interest loans associated. So just more information on that would always be helpful. Being in our new division, community planning and resiliency, what we're running into is a lot of bad experiences with FEMA technical assistance. I'm not bashing FEMA, okay? I'm just talking about grant technical assistance in general. I'm using FEMA as the example here, but what we're finding is in our normal jobs, we're having to become grant managers, and we're having a lot of issues with that. And then we're having a lot of issues selling that to county management because of those bad experiences. So for example, we just got an opportunity for a watershed management plan under the state's planning initiative funds that they allocated from Hurricane Irma and Hurricane Ian HMGP, but we failed twice trying to sell that to county leadership just due to the bad experiences we had on the stormwater side, on capital improvement side. So I just think a little bit more clarity on grant management technical assistance would be very helpful to come along with FDEM at minimum, but any of these other agencies. Critical infrastructure study, I'm finding that we just completed, we're almost at the finish line with our vulnerability assessment with FDEP, but we are finding the same questions happen over and over when it comes to any study from a consultant, which is building specific critical buildings and critical infrastructure, different kind of predisposed questions that we can't answer at times. And so even though we will engage in a critical infrastructure, critical facility study, if there's any funding resources or anything specific from any of these agencies that would help us with that, I think that would be very helpful. I'm interested in, I saw a lot of stuff from EDA, thank you for the presentation, by the way, that shed a lot of light on where we see you involved in some of our stuff, but we don't know that all that you do. Were those, is that a cost match program as well? Okay, all right, appreciate that. And then, okay, that just took my fifth question away, so thank you. We're getting a lot of pressure right now with residential dry flood proofing. So we are looking at the building code, trying to come to a middle ground on what we will allow and not allow between the jurisdictions. We understand that there is some general guidance from FEMA, but we want to know if there's going to be maybe some long-term considerations about actual federal guidance as requirements through CFR. And I know the prevailing issue with FEMA is that we can't get in front of Congress to change CFR. So that's the ongoing issue of kicking the can down the road with the NFIP, et cetera. So just know that locally we're dealing with that heavily. We understand the ramifications of not being able to protect the entirety of the envelope. I'm getting into building regulation heavily right now. I don't mean to do that, but we would like a little bit more guidance. We did get some from the state, fortunately, which is very rare for us to get that. But we are getting that pressure from residents because specifically when it comes to repetitive loss properties under FEMA's categorization, it just doesn't match, you know, 2 or more claims over a 10-year period. Now I've got to potentially elevate my house, among other mitigation options. And when it comes to property acquisition, most communities, apart from the example given in the water district there, property acquisition, we lose the tax base. So we are fortunate to see a mitigation reconstruction program under FEMA. We're wondering if that's existent in other programs, other federal agencies. And we understand that $220,000 monetary cap. I don't understand a lot about the SBA mitigation side. We understand the low interest residential loans associated with individual assistance declarations that we receive, and SBA tags along. We're also aware of SBA declarations independent of FEMA, but understanding that mitigation side now will help us specifically when we bring those DRCs, the disaster recovery centers, into our community, where we can go ahead and start talking to those homeowners about allocating that towards cost match for mitigation funding. And then, as FEMA always deals with, it's just streamlining the HMA process. It's taking a really, really long time for anything. I've got one homeowner after Ian that I somehow miraculously got sponsored through a local government entity. She's been waiting 2 years for an award. She's been diligent. She's got a grant manager. She's got a consultant. She's got a home elevating contractor, excuse me. So she's got someone who will elevate her home. She's got a general contractor overall looking at the totality of the situation, upgrading that past the substantial improvement rule, substantial damage rule. And then she's got a grant consultant as well. And they just put her on a waiting list because they don't have verification that she's a historical structure or not. And so when we clarified that through a congressional inquiry, we were initially, what I've heard is that she was met with, okay, unfortunately you're in a queue, so we'll get to you in 5 months. And that is the only document holding up her potential award approval. So it's those little nuances we get caught up in that I think we could get some clarity on. And we don't want to keep having to tap into congressional inquiries with things that we don't necessarily need to. That's all I have.
Thank you so much. Did I miss anyone? Okay, if you think of something as we go on, there's Post-it notes on each table, and you can write down your thought, your question, your project, and there's some sheets on the wall back here, say parking lot. You could just stick them on there. We don't want to miss any of your comments or questions, so feel free to do that. Our next session is on infrastructure. Greg, I know you wanted to say a few words before Jim took over.
Thank you. Thanks, Jim. I'll come up there. Thanks, guys. So before before we start talking about critical infrastructure systems, I just wanted to mention a couple of important points, because I think the gentleman's question was instructive. Again, speaking for EDA specifically at this point, our grants are done on a cost-sharing basis, and typically what that means is if we're doing infrastructure projects, our cost share is 50%. Now, under disaster supplemental conditions, typically our federal grant rate can be as high as 80%, and in some cases, I know some of the gentlemen were talking in fiscally constrained counties, we can go as high as 100%, but that's on a case-by-case basis, all right? So obviously, there's a much more generous federal share when we have disaster supplemental conditions. With infrastructure, again, just speaking specifically now about EDA, we're going to build out critical infrastructure to support economic development. We're not going to build infrastructure related to residential development or sort of modernization, improvement, or maintenance and things like that. Those are functions of the local government. So we're not going to essentially supplant those local functions. So when we're building out infrastructure, we're building out infrastructure to support a job creation activity. And I showed you some examples there. So, you know, it's building out access roads to industrial parks, water and sewer lines to help manufacturers and things like that. We can do projects in corridors and things like that. But our primary mission is economic development. So it's not residential development. Okay, just want to make that clear. Now, when you think about critical infrastructure, think about it comprehensively, right? We're having these comprehensive discussions here. So what do I mean by that? What do I mean by that is when you think comprehensively, think about all, ask for what you need. If you're coming to us with a infrastructure project, best example I can probably give is we did a project in city of Lake Worth Beach. And how did that project originate? So Lake Worth Beach has about a 400-acre commerce park that's under public and private ownership. And what they wanted to do is they wanted to redevelop that park to optimize the economic opportunities in the city. So they came to us initially for EDA to support a master infrastructure planning effort. So EDA funded that master planning infrastructure effort, and one of the projects that came out of that master infrastructure planning effort was to widen Boutwell Road, which bisects this industrial park. Why did they want to widen Boutwell Road? Well, they wanted to support manufacturing activities in that commerce park in order to get semi-tractor trailer trucks to be able to access those sites along Boutwell Road. They needed to widen the roadway. But the project was more than just widening the roadway. So what they came to us and they said, okay, Greg, we'd like EDA funding to widen the road, to add telecommunications, fiber, stormwater, sidewalks, all these elements. So when I say comprehensive, think about all the elements in that project. If you're doing a roadway, then do the stormwater at the same time, right? You don't want to come back a couple of years later and say, you know, we should have done the stormwater on that roadway. You know, I've got a few airports now that are struggling with stormwater issues, and luckily they're integrating roadway capacity with stormwater. So that's just an example. Ask for what you need, right? And why do I say ask for what you need? I say ask for what you need is because when we find ourselves with disaster supplemental opportunities, we can do larger scale grants or larger scale projects. So where we're typically constrained on our recurring funding to doing, you know, a project at EDA, we're going to top out at about $2 million in funding on a 50-50 basis. That translates to about a $4 million project. Used to be you could build a mile of roadway for $1 million. Well, good luck with that. You can't do that anymore, right? But under disaster supplemental conditions, we can do larger scale projects. We can do $5 million projects, $10 million projects, and you know, we have done projects in those larger veins. So so to all the folks that have talked about infrastructure projects, ask for what you need, be comprehensive, think about how it's going to, again, from EDA's perspective, how it's going to help your community recover and become more resilient economically speaking. And the last, possibly the most important point about infrastructure is, we've been talking today about economic recovery and resiliency. The infrastructure itself, and the gentleman, I think, just want to say this, make sure you build resilient infrastructure systems as well. We're currently looking at funding a lift station elevation project in this area of Southwest Florida. I can't get into the details, but one of the questions we looked at when they put the project in is the lift station going to be elevated to the proper elevation to avoid flood concerns? And so we validated it with FEMA and our folks that yes, it was to the proper elevation. So make sure that when you're building a roadway, make sure the crown of that roadway is to the proper height. So build out resilient infrastructure systems in and of themselves, because we want you to do it right the first time, and we'd rather have a more comprehensive project than to have you come back and say we should have elevated it to a higher standard or something like that. So just wanted to throw out a couple of points there. I know infrastructure is a really complex and comprehensive item, so just wanted to throw those out there. Oh, go ahead. Yeah, go ahead, Jim. Oh, and I can speak for most federal agencies too. When it comes to infrastructure, we only build public infrastructure. It's got to be publicly owned and maintained and operated. We don't build private infrastructure. So just wanted to make sure that you folks have that.
You mentioned job creation, but what about maintaining job?
Yes. So the three metrics that EDA congressionally has to validate its value added is the job creation potential of our programs, job retention, and private sector investment. So those are the three things. So in many cases, communities may only have job retention as the benchmark of their project, and that's okay. You just have to demonstrate that. But for the EDA project, these jobs are potentially could go away. Right? There's always a but-for proposition. So but for this project, these jobs couldn't come in, or the jobs might be lost, or this private sector investment wouldn't be made.
Would that be letters from the business stating that?
It depends. I don't want to get into the granular nature, but generally we look for best faith job commitments from the downstream employers. That's not a contractual obligation, but that's a best faith guess that yes, if you build this roadway access project, we're going to bring potentially 150 to 200 jobs into the community over the next 3 to 5 years. I mean, we know that there's a long runway, right? It takes some time to put the pieces into play, but generally we say 3 to 5 years is a good time horizon for them to make those determinations. If they make those determinations over the course of the grant history, that's great. If they don't make them, we understand that, hey, the market is up, it's down, it's sideways, so that's okay too. And if they create more jobs, that's good too. So really what I'm saying is we don't penalize the company, nor do we penalize the grantee for providing us these estimates. And I know my friend at Charlotte County EDO, I mean, that's the deal. We understand that business conditions, business plans are not always going to be 100% perfect, right? So, but job creation, job retention, private sector investment, those are what drive the competitiveness to us in terms of making our determinations to fund the projects.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.